Nurse stabbed to death in Germany. Now, a Kenyan woman was on Wednesday evening found dead inside her shop in Essen town in Germany.
So sad. And
family in Naivasha is in shock and are still grieving after their 27-year-old daughter was brutally murdered in Germany. Here's that report.
Prayers
are going on at this home of the late Mary Waithera Kamathi, who was found lying in her shop in Essen town on Wednesday evening and was confirmed dead on arrival at a nearby hospital. Emotions ran high in her home in Kayole Estate in Naivasha, hours after the family was informed by friends about the mysterious murder. Her mother, Alice Kamathi, had last communicated with her just 48 hours before her death.
Jana ndio nilishikwa na habari, nilipigiwa simu na pastor wangu akaniambia anakuja nyumbani. Sikuwa natarajia mambo yenye atanitetea, na wakati aliniletea mambo ya kifo, mimi niliona kama niko dunia ingine. Mtoto yangu sio ugonjwa, mtoto yangu sio accident.
Before she was the ghost of Essen, Mary was the pride of Kayole, Naivasha. She left Kenya in 2011 with a suitcase full of dreams and the weight of a grieving family on her shoulders. Her father had just passed away, leaving her mother and brother struggling with illness. Mary didn't go to Germany to party. She went to be a savior. From working as a nanny in Stuttgart to studying late at night to become a nurse, she did everything right. But the archives show that the very thing she went looking for, love and a better life, is exactly what led her into the path of a killer she once called a friend. When Mary Waithera stepped off that plane in 2011, she wasn't just another traveler. She was a woman on a mission, with the hopes of her entire family in Naivasha packed into her suitcase. She started her life in Germany in the city of Stuttgart, entering on an au pair visa. For those who think moving abroad is all glitz and glamour, Mary's early days were a reality check. Being an au pair meant living in someone else's home, navigating a language that felt like a wall, and working long hours caring for other people's children, while her own heart was back home with her grieving mother and ailing brother. She was at the bottom of the ladder, but she refused to stay there. While many would have been content with just having a visa, Mary was already looking at the next mountain she had to climb. The transition from a domestic worker to a medical professional in Germany is a path paved with bureaucracy and sleepless nights. Mary didn't just want to survive, she wanted a career that would allow her to send significant help back to Kayole. She began the rigorous process of training as a geriatric nurse, a field that requires not just technical skill, but a massive amount of emotional resilience and a perfect command of the German language. Imagine the strength it took for her to study complex medical terms in a foreign tongue while working to support herself. She eventually moved from Stuttgart to Essen, where she finally realized her dream. By 2018, she was no longer the nanny from Kenya. She was a respected, qualified nurse caring for the elderly in Germany. She had transformed herself into a professional who was vital to her community. However, the tragedy of Mary's journey is that the more successful she became, the more she became a target for those who saw her as a bank or a stepping stone. Even after reaching the status of a professional nurse, Mary never forgot her roots or her kindness. She continued to work part-time at the kiosk in Essen's South District, helping her boyfriend and even assisting other immigrants like the Tanzanian man who lived above the shop. She used her professional earnings to sustain a life in Europe and a family in Africa, becoming a bridge between two worlds. Her journey from a young au pair in Stuttgart to a seasoned nurse in Essen is a testament to the Kenyan spirit, hardworking, ambitious, and selfless, making it all the more devastating that her life was stolen just as she had finally made it to the top. In the Kenyan mind, finding a partner in the West is often seen as reaching the ultimate goal, a good teacher who will guide you to a better life. For Mary Waithera, this guide was a German man named Carsten L. They met on the internet around 2012, shortly after Mary had finished her time as an au pair. It was a whirlwind romance that quickly led to a wedding, and on the surface, Mary had secured the life every diaspora dreamer wants. She had the legal status, a German husband, and a professional career as a geriatric nurse. But the archives tell a colder story. By 2017, the marriage that was supposed to be her sanctuary had crumbled. They separated and Mary moved out to start a new life in Essen. This is the first crack in the foreigner fantasy. Even with a white partner, Mary found herself alone, having to start over in a new city, proving that a white partner is not a shield against life's storms. The betrayal, however, did not come from her former husband, but from the very people she tried to lift up. After her separation, Mary began a relationship with a Kenyan man named Kamau, who operated a small trinkhal or kiosk in Helbingstrasse. Mary, ever the hard-working daughter of Naivasha, didn't just sit back. She worked her nursing shifts and then spent her evenings helping Kamau run the shop. This is where the ghost enters the story. Living in the apartment directly above the shop was a 32-year-old Tanzanian man named Halfan Ali Halfan. Mary and Kamau didn't just know him, they were their benefactors. In a move that reflects the deep kindness of the Kenyan spirit, they helped Halfan secure that apartment and had supported him with money when he was down. They treated him like a brother in a cold foreign land. They thought they were building a community. They didn't realize they were feeding a predator. On the night of January 17, 2018, the betrayal turned deadly. Kamau was conveniently out of the country, traveling abroad, leaving Mary alone to run the shop. The evidence at the scene was chilling. Mary was found on the floor of the kiosk with horrific head injuries and deep stab wounds to her chest. There was no sign of a struggle at the door, meaning Mary likely let her killer in. The German homicide squad, led by Chief Superintendent Oliver New, found a hot trail of forensic evidence that led directly to the man living upstairs. Halfan Ali Halfan, the man Mary had helped pay for his roof, had allegedly come down those stairs and turned a knife on the woman who had been her sister in the diaspora. The archives suggest he knew exactly when she would be alone, waiting for the moment the foreign dream was most vulnerable.
Perhaps the greatest betrayal, however, came from the system itself. Despite having a named suspect with a prior record of violent crime, the investigation seemed to lose its fire almost as soon as it began. Halfan vanished into thin air the moment the body was discovered. While the German police put out a wanted notice, the search didn't cross the international borders with the urgency a local victim might have received. Mary's family in Naivasha was left to watch from thousands of miles away as the case went from a hot lead to a cold file in the Essen archives. The man who lived above her, who ate from her hand and saw her struggle to support her sick mother back home, was allowed to disappear into the shadows of Europe. It serves as a haunting reminder. In these foreign lands, the people who look like you or love you can sometimes be the very ones who lead you to your end, while the law stands by and watches the immigrant headlines fade away. Back in the Kayole estate of Naivasha, the air was thick with a silence that no mother should ever have to experience. Alice Kamathi, Mary's mother, remembers the last time she spoke to her daughter. It was just 2 days before the murder. Mary had called, her voice full of the usual warmth, promising to send more money for the family's needs. You see, Mary wasn't just a daughter, she was a lifeline. Alice and her eldest son, Mary's brother, are both diabetic. In Kenya, managing diabetes is a financial mountain, and Mary was the one who paid for every vial of insulin and every healthy meal. When the news reached Naivasha via a local reverend, the family didn't just lose a child, they lost their future. Alice's grief was compounded by a terrifying reality. They were cash-strapped and had no way to bring Mary's body home. The dream of Germany had turned into a nightmare where they couldn't even afford to bury their hero in the soil she was born to. The brother, Samuel Njuguna, became the voice for a family desperate for answers, but he quickly found himself caught in a web of international red tape. He reached out to the Kenyan embassy in Germany, hoping for a big brother to step in and demand justice. Instead, he was met with the cold reality of diplomacy, being referred back to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Nairobi. While Mary was a hero to her people, to the officials she was a file number. The family had to rely on press reports and friends of friends to find out that their daughter had been butchered by a man she had once helped. It took a GoFundMe campaign and the kindness of strangers to finally bring Mary home to Naivasha for a decent burial, a final act of dignity that her own government and the German state failed to provide. When we look at the investigation by the SN Homicide Squad, led by Chief Superintendent Oliver New, we see a trail that started hot and went cold with suspicious speed. Within days of the murder on January 17, 2018, the police had everything they needed. They had forensic evidence from the shop, they had numerous witness interrogations, and they had a primary suspect, 32-year-old Halfan Ali Halfan. They knew he lived right above the shop, they knew he had a prior record of violent crime, they even knew that Mary and her boyfriend had helped him financially. Yet, despite this mountain of evidence, the suspect managed to vanish from a city as organized and monitored as Essen. How does a man with no resources, living in a foreign country, slip through a homicide net unless the net was never truly tightened? The archives suggest a fumble that smells like systemic neglect. Because the victim and the suspect were both African immigrants, the case lacked the public pressure that usually forces a manhunt across European borders. While the police declared him wanted, there was no massive international push, no Interpol red notice that stayed in the headlines. 8 years have passed since that night on Helbing Street, and Halfan Ali Halfan remains a ghost. He is likely still in Europe, possibly in a neighboring country like Belgium or the Netherlands, living under a new name, while Mary's mother still sits in Naivasha, waiting for a phone call that justice has been served. If the killer had been a white man, or if Mary had been a German citizen, would this hot trail have been allowed to go cold? This isn't just a murder case, it's an archive of how the world treats the lives of our sisters when they are far from home.
Next week, we dive back into the case that shocked the nation. Courtney Clenny, the social media star facing a life sentence, and the mother who says her world was destroyed on April 3, 2022.